friends, I'm Arpit and I'm here with today's analysis. Today is 9th of May and we are going to deal with three very important topics which are in news. First is the three-phase ceasefire deal. This three-phase ceasefire deal is between Israel and Hamas. When this deal was adopted by Hamas, just after a day, Israel forces captured the Rafah crossing border, which is basically a crucial link point between Egypt and the Gaza Strip, clearly indicating that Israel is not wanting to accept this and has clearly said that this deal has been softened, means certain provisions have been changed. What are the provisions? Provisions are largely with respect to release of hostages in return of prisoners, then withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, then reconstruction and redevelopment of Gaza is also planned in the third phase. But let's see how this goes forward because pressure is mounting on Israel to end the war or to do certain truce. But let's see how things happen. Next is EVs at the center of conflict between China and Europe. Now, electric vehicles are the future, and many companies all across the world they are wanting to jump onto EV production or manufacturing. Same is the case in India. Now there are three Chinese companies which are very well known nowadays for producing EVs. These three companies are also popular in Europe. Now European Union claims that Chinese government has given subsidies to these three companies and that is why their products are cheap and thus they are becoming popular in European Union and wants to impose import duties on them so that they become at par with other products which are being sold in the European Union markets. Now, with Xi Jinping's visit in Europe this week, this issue is going to be picked up for a discussion. So let's see what happens. Last is relocation of tigers in Maharashtra. Tigers are being relocated to the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, which is in the northern parts of Western Ghats, western part of Maharashtra. Actually, tiger population is low in the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, which has, you know, uh, made the authorities to take this particular action. From where the tigers will be relocated? Tigers will be relocated from the Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve, which is somewhere in the eastern part of Maharashtra. This kind of relocation program will, in short span of time, increase the population of tiger, but the long-term population of tigers to thrive over there in the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve will depend on multiple factors, including interference of the humans with the animals, construction of, any infrastructure projects in the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve region. It should not be done. Then only these populations will be thriving. So let's get started. The three-phase ceasefire deal. Now, the conflict is ongoing between Israel and Hamas. Hamas approved of this three-point or three-phase ceasefire deal, stating that, you know, we want truce, we want peace, and it is basically 42 days first phase, 42 days second phase, and then after that it is the third phase, which is, a long-term phase, which is entailing reconstruction and redevelopment of Gaza. But the main will be these 84 days, 42 days of the first phase, 42 days of the second phase. This was adopted. And just a day after adopting this particular ceasefire deal by Gaza, by, these Hamas fighters, the Israeli Defense Forces attacked the Rafah border. Rafah border is a crucial crossing between Egypt and southern Gaza. Israel rejected the deal, saying it was not acceptable because its terms had been softened. So, terms have been changed. Whatever was in negotiation, those have been softened. So that is why Israel is not accepting it, and Israel is, expressing its dissatisfaction with this three-phase ceasefire deal by attacking this border post, which is a very crucial border post. Now, components of the deal, which has been adopted by the Hamas fighters. The three phases are there, so we'll pick up phase by phase. So, in phase one, a 42-day ceasefire will be there, during which Hamas would free 33 Israeli hostages, alive or dead. This is, I don't know why they've put this. In return for Israel releasing 30 children and women for each released Israeli hostage. So this is what is the first point is. From the first day, entry of intensive and sufficient quantities of humanitarian aid, relief, material, and fuel would be allowed in Gaza. Gaza kind of is a landlocked, I would say, region, but on the western side it has Mediterranean Sea, but you know all the supplies and all, they come from the eastern side that have been blocked, so those need to be again revamped. Third is Hamas would release three Israeli hostages on the third day of the agreement, and then release three more hostages every 7 days, prioritizing women if possible, including civilians and conscripts. So the rate of release of, I would say, hostages by Hamas will be slow, and the rate of release of hostages by Israeli forces would be more. This is what has been there in this particular, I would say, first phase. Now, in the sixth week, Hamas would release all remaining civilian hostages covered by this phase. Israel would release the agreed number of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons. Sixth week means 42, when we are approaching 35 days to 42 days, 35th day to the 42nd day. This is going to be the sixth week. So during this phase, during this period, that is the end of first phase, this is going to happen. Israel would then partially withdraw troops from Gaza and allow the free movement of Palestinians from south to north Gaza. So there are Israeli troops stationed over there, which has restricted the movement. Next is we are still in the phase one. Cessation of military flights over Gaza Strip would take place for 10 hours per day. And on the days when hostages have to be released, on those days, 12 hours. On the third day after releasing the first Palestinian prisoners, Israeli forces would completely withdraw from Al Rashid Street in northern Gaza, and all military sites would be dismantled. On the 22nd day of the first phase, Israeli forces would withdraw from the center of the strip, that is the Gaza Strip, east of Salah al-Din Road, and an area near to the Israeli border. So, northern Gaza, central Gaza, withdrawal of forces, they're talking about in the first phase. In the second phase, which is another 42 days, that is from the 43rd day till the 84th day, there has to be an agreement to restore a sustainable calm in Gaza. Sustainable means long lasting. The complete withdrawal of most Israeli troops from Gaza will happen, and Hamas would release Israeli reservists and some soldiers in return for Israel releasing Palestinians from jail. So the release of common citizens happened in the first phase. Release of you know reservists means reserve soldiers or the soldiers which have been captured by both the sides, they will be released in the second phase. So clearly priority is being given to the civilians in the first phase, and then in the second phase comes these soldiers and reservists. In the third phase, completion of exchange of bodies. There are multiple dead bodies also, so those also should happen. Blockade of Gaza Strip would end. There is this economic blockade done by Israel of the Gaza Strip, which is not allowing any, essential supplies, or for that matter, any supply to go to or come from Gaza, because Gaza is like this. If I draw the map of Israel, so here is this Gaza Strip, the Mediterranean Ocean, and here is that Rafah border crossing, which connects Gaza to Egypt over here. Here is Egypt. So earlier there was this blockade from here. Nothing was allowed to come here. Okay. Now the Rafah border has also been undertaken by Israeli forces. This is also blocked. So everything is blocked for you know uh, people over here in the Gaza Strip as of now, and Hamas is the one who is there in the Gaza Strip. So step by step they have been demanding. Like in the first phase you saw earlier, from the northern Gaza Strip, the Israeli forces withdraw. Then from the central, now from the southern also they will withdraw. Complete withdrawal will happen in the second phase. Then in the third phase, one more thing will happen, that 3 to 5 year plan for reconstruction of Gaza would start. Homes, civilian facilities, infrastructure would be rebuilt. Compensation would be given to all those who have been affected. Now, countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, and all who have been part of this reconstruction and redevelopmental, I would say, activities in the past also in this region, because this is not the first time that destruction is happening in this region. Destruction to this magnitude never happened in this region like it has happened now. So those countries are saying that we will not invest in reconstruction and redevelopment in Palestine and Gaza unless we have a sustainable plan in place. Because it should not be like, nah, we are investing and after a few years again we have to invest for the same. So this is what the countries have been demanding. And the demand is not, I would say, illogical. It is quite logical, and it is, it should be there. A sustainable solution should be there to this solution, or to this problem. Now, EVs at the center of conflict between China and Europe. Electric vehicles are, I would say, the mobility of the future. We have to, adopt more and more EVs, and India also has a plan in place of adopting more and more EVs, and it is happening. This transition is happening. We can see at the ground level as well. Now, this transition is not only happening in India, it is happening all across the world. In the developed countries, especially, this transition is fast paced as compared to this transition in India. And when I talk about EU, it is, you know, very much moving towards EVs. And China understands this, that this is the product of the future. This is the product which will create a lot of demand in the future. So there are Chinese companies who have, developed their capacities in manufacturing EVs. Like there's a company called as BYD, a good company. Cars are also decent enough. They're also seen on the Indian roads. Even Tesla, which is a US based company, Elon Musk, has its manufacturing facility in China. From there, it is manufacturing, Tesla vehicles and then exporting to the world. And for China also, they are coming in. So, what is the issue then? Now, the issue mainly is that European Union claims that China is subsidizing its EV makers, due to which the EV makers are able to keep the prices of the EVs low. Chinese government have deep pockets. They have a lot of dollars. They can, subsidize. And what is the problem for EU then? They're getting cheap products. They should be happy. No doubt they're getting cheap products, but these products can distort the market. They will leave no room for the European car makers who are wanting to venture into EVs or who are venturing into EVs, because European car makers like Mercedes or BMW, Volkswagen and all, they have already they're also making EVs. There will be very less demand or no demand of for their EVs, because their EVs will be comparatively expensive as to those Chinese EVs. So European Union wants to impose an import duty on those EVs coming from China, so that their cost becomes at par with, you know, or their cost becomes competitive. Not at par, but the cost becomes competitive. This is what the issue is. And that is why EVs are at the center of conflict between China and European Union. So China's trade issues with European Union arise mainly out of friction over exports of cheap Chinese EVs. Why they are cheap? They are cheap because subsidies are being given. Why is this situation? Chinese exports to European markets and significantly outweigh European exports to mainland China. Means China shares a trade surplus with EU, and China shares a trade surplus with almost every country in the world. Means China exports more to those regions or those countries and imports less from them. The EU has complained that unfair market access is a key reason for this situation. Now, subsidies versus tariff. China's car shipments to foreign markets and the EU in particular have surged in recent years. So this, supply, or I would say Chinese are taking the market share more and more in the EU markets. EU opened an investigation into subsidies going into the Chinese EVs. And under these subsidies, three companies were questioned: BYD, SAIC, and Geely. And these three companies failed to supply sufficient information to the anti-subsidy investigators. And when they failed to supply sufficient information, the European Commission is saying that European Commission is the, I would say, representative body in the European Union. So EC is saying that should the EC conclude that these three companies had not provided all the facts, it could use facts available elsewhere to come to a conclusion. and the facts available elsewhere are clearly indicating that the Chinese government has subsidized these three companies or these three car makers. And if they have been subsidized, then EU has a clear policy that if any good or product is subsidized in their respective country and it is coming as an import to EU, European Union has the full authority to levy subsidies or levy import duties on those particular subsidized products to make it more competitive in the European market. So this is what EU is saying. Now, Chinese EVs in Europe, how is the position of Chinese EV? We should know. China made EVs are projected to make up more than a quarter of all EV sales in Europe in 2024. So this is 25%, which is substantial. And market share is increasing by more than 5 percentage points from year earlier. Percentage points means earlier it was 20%, now it is 25%. Next year it will be 30%. According to the Brussels-based European Federation for Transport and Environment, this is basically an NGO over there, which gives certain data about transportation and its impact on the environment. Nearly 20% of battery-powered EVs sold in the EU in the last year were from China. In France and Spain, close to a third of all EVs sold were shipped from China. The share of Chinese-made vehicles in the EU is expected to rise more than 25% in 2024, according to the T&D report. And brands such as BYD and SAIC set up step up their global expansion plans. So these companies, Chinese companies, since their products demand is too high in European markets, they're also, stepping up their manufacturing capabilities and all. So they know that there is forecast of increased demand and they need to meet those demands. So this is what is happening. Majority of foreign EVs currently sold in the EU are from Western brands such as Tesla. But unfortunately, Tesla, which is being sold in European markets the most, is also being manufactured in China. That is also coming from China. Although that is not subsidized by the Chinese government, that cannot be subsidized because Tesla is not a Chinese brand, but it definitely contributes to the trade deficit with China of EU. So this is something which is an issue between both these, I would say, countries, China and EU, and they might be you know doing certain developments over here in this domain, and these developments can impact these Chinese car makers and definitely can impact relations between China and EU if EU decides to impose import duties on the cars coming from China. EVs, basically. And now the last piece of news, that is relocation of tigers in Maharashtra. So there's one Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, which is there in the western part of Maharashtra. So there, you know, tigers are being relocated from Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve. So from here, the tigers will go to Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. This is in Maharashtra's western region, and this is in the central eastern region, Chandrapur district. However, the objective of the project can only be achieved if the Sahyadri Konkan Wildlife Corridor, forest in the STR, Goa, and Karnataka, is secured enough and free from human disturbances. See, this relocation of tigers from TATR to STR, TATR is Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve to Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. This will instantly increase the population in Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. But this population will sustain and grow in the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve only and only if, it is free from human disturbances. Human disturbances like man-animal conflict, infrastructure construction and all should not be there. So all these things should be, undertaken. Then only it will be successful. Before proceeding ahead, what are tiger reserves? You might have heard about national parks. You might have heard about wildlife sanctuaries. National parks are generally designated by the central government, wildlife sanctuaries by the state governments. Now, any national park or any wildlife sanctuary additionally can be designated as a tiger reserve. Why it will be additionally designated as a tiger reserve? Because tiger population is substantial over there, or it becomes an important site for the conservation of the tigers. Because once this any national park or wildlife sanctuary is additionally designated as a tiger reserve, they are governed under Project Tiger, which is administered by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. And Project Tiger is a project which was launched in the 1970s, I would say extremely successful project. Why? Because it enabled the increase in population of the tigers in the country, and India is a country which has the highest population of tigers all across the world. But at one point of time, we were struggling a lot, but thanks to Project Tiger. Now, wildlife, this tiger reserves are designated by, this NTCA only, and they focus extremely, over there in those sites which have been designated as tiger reserves. A tiger reserve consists of a core and critical habitat. So, core and critical habitat is there in which no human activity is allowed as such, except for research and development. And it also has a buffer area. In buffer area, limited human activities are allowed. So, it is done in this way. Now, about STR, that is Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. It is located in the north of the Western Ghats. So, Western Ghats starts from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Goa, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Puducherry, and it goes along the western coast. Now, in the northern part of Western Ghats lies this Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. It comprises of these two, Koina Wildlife Sanctuary and Chandoli National Park. So, this both are, tiger reserves. See, we should understand this concept clearly that a wildlife sanctuary can be additionally designated as a tiger reserve. A national park can be additionally designated as a tiger reserve. Here, the coincidence is that in this Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, there is a wildlife sanctuary also and a national park also. And this entire area has been, you know, designated as Tiger Reserve, Chandoli National Park, Koina Wildlife Sanctuary, districts Kolhapur, Satara, Sangli, and Ratnagiri districts where they are. So, this is about Sahyadri Tiger Reserve. Tiger population in STR. Tiger population in STR has been historically low. There are three reasons. Poaching is high over there, poor prey base for the tigers, and changing habitat. Because this Western Ghats in itself is fragile. So, these are the three reasons. And even after STR was notified, the number of tigers did not increase. Notified as a tiger reserve, it did not increase. One way the population can increase is through inflow of tigers from the forests located towards the south of STR in Goa and Karnataka. So, south of STR is over here. This is Goa. Here is Karnataka. This is Karnataka, and STR is over here. So, from here, the movement happens. But, you know, that is going to take a lot of time because if it by itself the movement happens, it is going to take a lot of time. As a result, the translocation of tigers has been initiated, has been done from Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve, which is in the central or eastern part of Maharashtra, to STR. And this will, short-term outcomes will be achieved, short-term increase in population of tigers will be witnessed. And, you know, if human interference will be minimum over there in the Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, then this population can survive and increase as well. So this is basically the plan. Now comes the MCQs. First is Rafah border crossing. A term often seen in news is a border between. Now, very simple it is. We started our today's video with this only. So Israel and Jordan, Israel and Syria, Egypt and Gaza, none of the above. Consider the following statements with respect to China EU trade and mark the correct one. China enjoys a trade surplus with EU. The EU can impose tariff on Chinese imports if they are subsidized. So, which among these is true? Which of the following is located in Maharashtra? Sahyadri Tiger Reserve, Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve, Chandoli National Park, Koina Wildlife Sanctuary. One only, one and two only, one, two, and three, and all of the above. Next is consider the following statements and mark the correct one. A national park can be additionally designated as a tiger reserve. Tiger reserve has a core and buffer area. Very simple it is. And you have to answer this. Today only 4 MCQs. And with this, we come to an end of today's session. I will be meeting you tomorrow now with more such informative news pieces. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, keep watching the videos, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai.